Good morning, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for sharing your time with me. I have several news to share with you. I have the CPJ Committee to Protect Journalists report on Eritrea uh, and also especially on Ethiopia. So the challenges Ethiopian journalists and the international media uh, suffering in Ethiopia. So the challenges they are suffering, freedom of reporting, freedom of expression is very challenged under Abiy Ahmed leadership. So I have a report on that one. Also, I'm sharing some video on the controversial trip Nancy Pelosi, the U.S. House Representative, senior leader, made to Taiwan, and the threat we are facing from Chinese government, plus the hunger in Oromia is also very, very tough one. So let's get started. So I will start first with a report, the hunger and the drought report in Oromia region. Uh, According to different media outlets, uh, only in Saba Boru Warada, in Guji zone, just one zone, about 38,000 people are exposed to hunger and drought. Just one Warada, small area. And 12 people already died. Plus other Oromia region, other Oromia zones in um, Oromia region, Bale zone, RC zone, East and West Hararge zones are also exposed to drought and hunger. We don't know the East and the West Walega zones because they are under military operation declared by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and we don't have internet and other communication to find out what these people are suffering these days. They have been suffering since Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018. They are under total blockade. No internet, no phone service, and no journalist, domestic and international journalists in East and West Walega, especially. So they are, under tremendous challenge. Their existence is threatened by this Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and those in Borana and other area, they are, suffering from hunger and drought. The government is covering up these challenges. The people are suffering instead of helping them. Delivering the aid they need, instead of calling on the international communities to help, they are covering it because they want to tell us and tell Ethiopians prosperity party is only about prosperity. They don't want to talk about any negative impacts of drought or hunger. So that's the challenge we are facing. It's not like long time ago when the international community rised up and helped Ethiopia, including the musicians, different musicians, more than I think more than 100 different musicians from Europe, America, and other countries came together. We are the world under this motto. We are the world. So they helped Ethiopians because the Ethiopian government and other media outlets exposed the hunger to the global stage. Now the government of Ethiopia is hiding the drought and hunger we are facing. So the international communities, they don't have that much information about Ethiopia. And the people are suffering under the war, under hunger and the drought in Oromia region especially. So let's continue with other news. This one is about, this also, this is good news. This is good news, ongoing peace dialogue between the Tigray region and the central government in Addis Ababa. And this is from the US and EU Special Envoy about the ongoing situation between the federal government and Tigray region after they have a meeting with Dr. Debretsion of Tigray region president. They released the following statement. With the latter assurance, there should be no obstacle for services to begin in Tigray, EU and the US Special Envoy said. Special envoys of the United States and the European Union said that they have received a letter from Tigray Regional President Debretsion to be passed to the government of Ethiopia, providing security guarantees for those who need to work to restore services. So no excuses for the government of Ethiopia. There is a guarantee letter given to the federal government. U.S. Special Envoy to the Horn Africa, Mike Hammer, European Union Special Representative for the Horn of Africa, Annette Weber, UN Under Secretary General and Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa, Hannah Tate, as well as ambassadors of Canada, Italy, and the deputy head of mission of the UK were in Mekelle today when they met and held discussion with Regional President Debretsion Gabriel Michael, PhD. It's encouraging, very encouraging effort by the international community to resolve this issue. The envoys agree that a swift restoration of electricity, telecom, banking, and other basic services in Tigray is essential for the people of Tigray, as recognized in earlier discussion with the Ethiopian government, said the statement released afterwards. With this security assurance, there should be no obstacle for the restoration of service to begin. I will read just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph full statement of these special envoys. On Tuesday, 2nd August 2022, the respective EU and the US Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, H.E. Annette Weber, and H.E. Mike Hammer traveled on their first joint mission to Mekelle, Tigray, to encourage the launch of talks between the federal government of Ethiopia and the Tigray People Liberation Front TPLF under the African Union auspices. Political dialogue is necessary to resolve the conflict in northern Ethiopia and achieve a durable peace. The envoys welcomed the public comment by both parties to engage in talks and expressed their readiness to support African-led mediation. The envoys agreed that a swift restoration of electricity, telecom, banking, and other basic services in Tigray is essential for the people of Tigray, as recognized in earlier discussion with the Ethiopian government. Tigray Regional President Debretsion provided the international community a letter to be passed to the government of Ethiopia, providing security guarantees for those who need to work to restore services. With this security assurance, there should be no obstacle for the restoration of service to begin. Equally, unfettered humanitarian access to Tigray and the Afar and Amhara neighboring regions affected by the conflict is imperative, accompanied by the lifting of restriction on cash, fuel, and fertilizers. Improved civilian military coordination with help ensure effective and transparent aid distribution. Furthermore, the EU and the US are committed to providing assistance to all communities in need in Ethiopia, including those affected by drought and food insecurity. Accountability is a key foundation for reconciliation. In this vein, the envoys urged cooperation with and access to the conflict area for the International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia to enable them to conduct a credible investigation. The envoys furthermore appealed to all sides of the conflict to refrain from hate speech and provocative rhetoric. Credit for this at this standard. So this is a very encouraging start, very encouraging to resolve the suffering of the Tigrayans. They have been suffering for almost 2 years. It's just challenging to live without light, without water, banking, and other basic services. So I hope this negotiating team will close this chapter and bring Ethiopia together. So that's the hope of Concerned Citizens Media. The Concerned Citizens Media hope to see the end of the suffering of the Tigrayan people. You know, that's not, they have been suffering more than enough. They have been through the media propaganda, hate speech, and the burning of them alive, and other atrocities we witness on video. These are, ugly history happened in that country. We don't want to see this kind of situation again in that country. That's why I call upon the Prime Minister and his leadership to resign. They failed the country. They failed Ethiopians. Now, it is worth to spend some time on a committee to protect journalists report on Ethiopia. I will try to read it very quickly. It's not that much. Then I will go to the video. It says, journalists face growing hostility as Ethiopia's civil war persists. Ethiopia's 21st-month-old civil war is accelerating the deterioration of press freedom in the Horn of Africa nation. The conflict between the federal government and the rebel force led by the Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, has promoted a media crackdown that extinguished the glimmer of hope sparked by the initial reform of Prime Minister Ahmed. Research by the Committee to Protect Journalists shows that Ethiopia now ranks with Eritrea as sub-Saharan Africa's worst jailer of journalists. This is shame for Ethiopians to be ranked with Eritrea. You know, we shouldn't be in this situation if the Prime Minister, didn't do all this harassment, torture, and jailing, intimidation of journalists plus other citizens. He was a messiah when he arrived. He turned into the dictator. That's why we are now the worst place for freedom of expression. Here is CPJ's briefing on the deteriorating conditions for Ethiopia's journalists, the context of the crackdown, and the recommendation to improve the country's climate for press freedom. What is behind the hostility toward the media? Reasons. Ethiopian journalists are no strangers to repression. Ethiopia used to be one of the world's most censored countries. Under the Abiy Ahmed administration and the previous TPLF administration, they have experienced internet shutdowns and had anti-terror laws used against them. Now, the fight to control the narrative of the war is one of the major reasons for the increasing hostility against the press. On the ground, fighting is accompanied by misinformation, disinformation, and a war of narratives on social media. In the beginning, the government even insisted on calling the conflict a law enforcement operation rather than a war. Journalists and commentators expressing dissenting views or doing independent reporting became vulnerable to arrest, threats, expulsion, and other forms of attacks. The crackdown on the press is also happening within the context of human rights violation from all sides of this war, as documented by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. In some cases, detained journalists have been held as part of broader sweeps in which thousands of people have been arbitrarily arrested, according to CPJ's own reporting as well as report by Human Rights Watchdog and the media. How many journalists have been arrested in Ethiopia since the start of the war? CPJ has documented the arrest of at least 63 journalists and media workers since November 4, 2020, at least 8 of whom remain detained as of August 1st, 2022. All the detention that CPJ has documented so far have been in Addis Ababa, the capital, Oromia, Amara, Afar, and Somalia states, and more recently in rebel-held Tigray state, which has been under telecommunication blackout for most of this war, making it difficult to researchers that even more journalists are held there. More detentions follow a similar script. Authorities arrest a journalist or media worker and present them in court, requesting more and more time to hold them for investigation. These proceedings have resulted in formal charges in very few of these cases documented by CPJ. When the courts eventually grant bail, police frequently mount appeals that delay the journalist's release. Some journalists are detained without access to family or legal counsel, such as in the case of Gobaze Sisai, who was arrested on May 1st and held for a week, and Yayeso Shimelis, who was held at an unknown location from June 28 to July 8. Freed journalists have told CPJ of restriction on their bank accounts and the movements even after their release. These detentions have a ripple effect on the broader media community. In 2021, Aulo Media Center shut down after its staff were arrested in mid-2021. CPJ also spoke to 4 previously detained journalists who said they were no longer working in journalism. Self-censorship becomes an inevitable byproduct in an environment of fear, eroding the diversity within public discourse and undermining the public's right to know. What other actions have been taken against the media? Journalists have faced physical attacks. In February 2021, men thought to be intelligence personnel raided the home of freelancer Lucy Casa and warned her about reporting on the conflict. A group of 4 unidentified men abducted and assaulted online journalist Abebe Bayu in June 2021. In 2021, CPJ documented the first killing of an Ethiopian journalist, Sisai Fida, in connection with their work since 1998. Sisai's death was attributed by authorities to the Oromo Liberation Army, an insurgent group allied with TPLF. CPJ continues to investigate the motive behind the killing of a second journalist, David Kabede Araya, who was shot in Mekelle, Tigray in January 2021, at a time when the city was in the hands of federal authorities. Addis Standard, an independent publication, was suspended for a week in 2021. New York Times correspondent Simon Marks was expelled in May 2021. Tom Gardner, an economist correspondent, expelled from Ethiopia in May 2022, has recounted how he was harassed online and offline. Telecommunications disruptions also continue to affect Tigray region, as well as parts of Amara and Afar state, undermining media coverage of the war. According to CPJ's reporting and the research by the digital rights organization Access Now, the shutdown has hampered CPJ's research into the killing of David Kabede Araya, the recent detention of 5 Tigray TV reporters, as well as reports that other journalists may be detained in the region. CPJ's annual prison census documented at least 9 journalists jailed in Ethiopia on December 1st, 2021. CPJ has since confirmed that 7 others were also in jail on that date. How does that affect CPJ census data for that year? It is important to understand that CPJ census reflects research based on specific indicator. It is a snapshot of journalists jailed around the world on December 1st. We do not include journalists released before or arrested after that date, or if we cannot confirm until after the census deadline that a journalist was in jail on December 1st. We didn't include an additional 7 journalists in the 2021 census because we either were not aware of their detention at the time or we were still investigating the details of their cases. Had we been able to confirm the details ahead of the 2021 census publication, the data would have reflected that Ethiopia had 16 journalists in jail on December 1st, meaning that it would have tied with Eritrea as sub-Saharan Africa's worst jailer of journalists. We have since reported the additional arrests as part of our daily coverage on our website, and will adjust our 2021 prison database when we publish our census for 2022. What does CPJ recommend to improve Ethiopia's press freedom climate? These are the recommendations. The authorities at federal and state level need to stop detaining journalists for their reporting. That would go far in clearing the fog of fear that characterizes the current media climate. Authorities need to address the injustice committed against journalists and ensure state institutions cannot be used to gag and harass the press in the future. Impunity breeds attacks on journalists, so authorities must do more to conduct credible, transparent investigation into physical attacks and to ensure the perpetrators are held accountable. Ongoing telecommunications disruptions should end, and the journalists should be allowed the free access they need, not only report the war, but other matters of public interest in Ethiopia. So that is the CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists report on Ethiopia. It's very damning, very damaging to Ethiopia, to Ethiopia's image. It is an indication that Ethiopia is turning into a dictatorship under Abiy Ahmed leadership. It's very bad, very ugly. I hope they will correct it in the coming days, weeks, years, months, years. I hope so. If they listen to CPJ's recommendation, other international organizations, about just harassing journalists, about challenging the press freedom. So I hope they will change their character. Ethiopia is failing in multiple phases, whether it's a press freedom or freedom of just innocent citizens, conduct of war on its own citizens, plus the challenge of international isolation and high unemployment, high inflation, so many problems under Abiy Ahmed. Now, maybe, they just desperate to get some international money. So now they look like ready to settle, especially the challenge they are facing with the international communities. So if you hear Redwan Hussein's statement, Prosperity Party is ready to negotiate with TPLF without any precondition. These are an indication that they want to settle because they cannot sustain economically and they cannot sustain international isolation. So they need some money from Europe. They need some money from United States to continue their atrocity against Ethiopians. So we hope they will learn the lesson and turn into a better system. Give up the power to the public. Let the people elect their own leaders and those who can respect human rights and international law. So this report of CPJ is a very, very bad one. Ugly name, ugly face. We are grouped with Eritrean, and Abiy Ahmed is learning everything from this guy. He is his coach, his advisor. He is turning everything upside down. All the hopes and the honeymoon we have witnessed in 2018 turned into a detention center, and so we are suffering a lot. Okay, let's continue with some videos and finish up today's presentation. Thank you again for joining me. There we go. So the first one is on Ethiopia. This is VOA reporting on there we go. There we go.
Abala is largely a ghost town. Following intense fighting in late December, residents say Tigray forces fired at civilians from this ridge overlooking the town. Most residents fled, but since forces aligned with the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, left in April, a handful have returned. Faras Liali, a local militia leader who fought against the TPLF, says the devastation caused by the war is far-reaching.
People are not afraid of war, but of famine. There is nothing to eat, and there are no markets or shops. There is great fear at the present time of starvation, and many families return to the town in confusion, not knowing what to do because of the lack of basic services in the city.
The residents say they're afraid of unexploded bombs too. Two boys showed VOA these munitions they found left in their home. Many people VOA spoke to in Abala and other surrounding towns said they did not care about the politics between the Ethiopian government and Tigray. They just want a return to normal life. Both sides have indicated they're ready to negotiate an end to Ethiopia's 21-month internal war. In June, the Ethiopian government said it had set up a committee for negotiations. Tigray has said it is doing the same. A TPLF spokesperson told VOA, however, he is no longer optimistic that talks will take place anytime soon.
I cannot say that today, because at that time, we were told by interlocutors, countries like the United States, the African Union, all of them, that basic services will start any minute now. We were counting not days, but hours, that there will be some move. Now, it looks like the Addis Ababa government have decided against it.
The government has cut telecoms, banking services,
so this,
fuel supplies,
VOA put it today, but
from reaching Tigray.
it looks like it might be
are unlikely to go ahead if these basic services
has been a while
restored to the
since
region.
this recording, because now we see
there are still obstacles to overcome, say analysts.
the delegation, EU delegation, US delegation meeting with Debrecen. So
it's not clear that Tigray's leadership or its people would be willing to accept the downsizing, let alone the abolition of that force. But equally, it's not at all clear the federal government would accept Tigray to become a fully functioning part of the federation and its political system, whilst it was still in possession of such a large and capable fighting force.
The TPLF has indicated it could try to secede from Ethiopia and form an independent state.
I think it's not a realistic option. We can simply take even Eritrea and practice. Eritrea left Ethiopia some 3 decades ago, and what it has been through is not as such, praiseworthy.
And let's also say which side takes control of the disputed region of West Tigray will play a major role in negotiations too. The Ethiopian government did not respond to a request for interview. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Abala, Ethiopia.
I think coming down to see Ross is very important and to see whether he will fit well here and just get a whole vibe of. And I saw how the campus was.
By the time she touched down, tensions were ratcheting up. An American this senior on this soil is provocative. Tonight, China has launched a joint military operation around the island, including firing long-range ammunition and testing guided weapons. It is a display of military might as well as anger.
The US and Taiwan have colluded to make provocations first, and China has only been compelled to act out of self-defense. In the face of the US's unscrupulous behavior in defiance of China's repeated and serious complaints, any countermeasures China is taking will be justified and necessary.
Arriving to applause in the capital, Taipei, Nancy Pelosi said, "Our congressional delegation's visit to Taiwan honors America's unwavering commitment to supporting Taiwan's vibrant democracy. America's solidarity with the 23 million people of Taiwan is more important today than ever as the world faces a choice between autocracy and democracy." The United States continues to oppose unilateral efforts to change the status quo.
It's pretty hard to get her to back down once something becomes a public dispute. And certainly by the time this became a topic as to whether she should go or not, it was already too late, knowing the speaker, to persuade her otherwise. And it probably wasn't in our interest at that point to let China talk us out of it, even if maybe it would have been better that she not go at all in the first place.
The self-governing island is surrounded by South Korea and Japan to the north and the Philippines to the south. But China is its closest neighbor, just 112 miles away. Later this week, in 6 areas surrounding Taiwan, the Chinese military is expected to carry out further exercises, including live fire drills. Nancy Pelosi's trip may be creating a buzz, but it is not unprecedented. Speaker Newt Gingrich visited 25 years ago, but back then China was not the economic and military superpower it is today. The only US president to set foot in Taiwan was Dwight Eisenhower in 1960. This trip is largely popular with members of Congress, but in the 3D chess of international diplomacy, the privately voiced reticence in the White House and Pentagon may be linked to concerns about a different part of the world, Ukraine. So far, the Chinese have not provided any significant military support to Vladimir Putin, such as their world-class drones. But some here worry this visit may mean that could change. Tomorrow, Speaker Pelosi is expected to visit Taiwan's parliament, meet the president, and host a lunch. This controversial trip is just getting started. Joe Pike, Sky News, Washington.
Nigeria is a country in a rush. Its Trans-Saharan gas pipeline that's been on hold for decades is now
this is the
empty.
last video, I think.
Africa's biggest oil producer wants to cash in on rising gas prices as Europe looks to reduce reliance on energy from Russia.
We're in the process of building a pipeline, a gas pipeline from here to Algeria, targeting the European market. We are also building a pipeline from the West African gas pipeline to Morocco, also targeting Europe. So what the Russian and Ukraine crisis has created is additional market for our gas.
He says Nigeria can make up for supply shortfalls for many European countries, but would need more of their investments to speed up delivery. Global prices of gas have soared in the wake of the war in Ukraine, with Europe accusing Russia of waging an economic war. Nigerian officials say many European investors who've been pulling out investments in fossil fuels here are slowly coming back. The country has proven reserves of 206 trillion cubic feet of gas. Now it's aiming to triple that in 8 years, as interest in crude oil is waning. For decades, oil companies operating here treated gas as a nuisance, capping or flaring it. As the rest of the world struggles with high prices and shortages, Nigeria burns 30% of its gas every year, a resource it could be capitalizing on as developed economies look for alternatives to Russian supplies. Industry analysts say the current global gas supply challenges are an opportunity to grow the sector.
I think we should be talking a lot more about, increasing the LNG opportunities that we have. Than really talking about this pipe. But that seems to be what government seems to focus on.
But the biggest challenge for Nigeria is funding. It's hoping the conflict in Ukraine could give many countries a reason to rethink their investments in gas as a transition fuel to cleaner energy. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Port Harcourt, Nigeria.
Okay, so these are the videos I'm sharing with you today, and Nigeria is, attempting to take advantage of the situation of Ukraine and the Russia war. So they are closer to Europe, and they are trying to do their best to help European countries and get some funding, which is interesting. We'll see. So let me conclude. The first serious matter for today is the CPJ report, a damning report about Ethiopia, about press freedom, about the challenge of all journalists are suffering in Ethiopia to control the narratives of, to control the news. Prosperity Party is just want us to listen to FANA or ABS or OBN, those controlled under Prosperity Party. They don't want to tolerate independent media, so they are doing everything to that matter to show the challenging the media, harassing the media, even if they don't respect the court decision. After the court freed the journalists, the political prisoners, they just rearrest them and extend the hearing and increase the bail, the amount of bail, the money, so that the journalists and the other free individuals cannot get out of jail. So many challenging situations. That's a very serious one. I hope the international community pay attention what Ethiopia is doing. I know now they are focused on dialogue, negotiation about Tigray and between the federal government, which is a good one. That should be resolved. But the freedom of the press, the suffering of the other regions, the other people, so many people in jail in Ethiopia, so many. And that should be the second agenda after they settled the Tigray region issue. Abiy Ahmed and his team are criminals, really, criminals. They are waging in Oromia region. The Oromia region is under the war now. And we don't know how many people died. We don't know how many people injured, how many houses burned down. They shut down the internet and other medias. And we don't know the total impact of this drought and hunger, because they are covering up. They are covering it up, and they don't allow the independent media to report. So this should be challenged by the international community, and the international community should help those people suffering. I know the United States is doing something, but European Union and others should also step up their help to the people suffering in Oromia, and some other areas, some other regions in Ethiopia. So, and the controversial Nancy Pelosi trip in Taiwan is also so far is okay. China is just expressing threats in words and some action, by flying their fighter jets. I hope it will cool down so that we will not have other trouble. Let's deal with Russia and the Ukraine now. So that's all I'm gonna say for today. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I will be back with other news. Please comment, share, like my videos so we can engage on in Ethiopia news and other global challenges in the coming days and years. Thank you again. So long, everyone.